Hey, in this video we'll be looking at setting up and installing applications for our Mac OS web dev setup. I have a fresh install of Mac OS here. It's basically untouched. In our last video we made some system preference changes. We made some changes to the Finder settings, keyboard settings, switched it to dark mode, simple setting changes like that. We made changes to the dock as well. Now this doesn't mean you can't follow along if you don't have a fresh install of Mac OS. If you even have Mojave, maybe even High Sierra, you could probably still follow along, but I'm not going to guarantee it's 100% backwards compatible with those operating systems. But it should be okay with just Catalina if you already had it pre-installed. It's just a little bit easier and cleaner if you have a fresh install. I set up a GitHub repo for instructions and commands that you can copy and paste while you're following along with the video. I'll post a link down below into the description. Okay, so let's get started here. I have a table of contents here. Let's go down. We can click on Install Applications. Okay, install and setup. General setup for install macOS Catalina 10.15.7. Let's open up Terminal. You can do that by Command Space and Terminal. Okay, so a couple settings I want to change here. We can switch I just want to change the font size because this is a fresh install. I haven't really done anything to this yet. So we can just do that, close that, and a new, and okay. Let's put this over to the side and shrink this over. The first thing we'll look at is command line tools. macOS command line tools has a bunch of utilities and compilers. Normally these tools and compilers come out of the box pre-packaged with Linux system, but this is our way to get those kind of tools and utilities. To check if we have it installed, you can type xcode-select-p. Sometimes this check isn't that reliable. It should give you the path for where the command line tools are set up. Now, another way to check is you can do GCC. This is one of the utilities or compilers that come with the toolkit. And here it will prompt me to install. Another way to prompt that is to just do xcode-select-install, and you'll get another prompt. But lately, I've been having this issue where it gives me this error, can't install the software because it's not currently available from the software update server. Now, the way around that is you can go and download it from the Apple developer site. Let's click on that. Now, I've logged into the Apple developer site using my Apple ID. So you have to log in through that before you can get this page. Now you can download it here or maybe this one if you want, but I'm not going to do either one of those. What I'm going to do is I'm going to install Homebrew. Homebrew is a CLI tool for installing and managing our applications. It makes it very easy to update your applications and manage them. And you can install all of this through command line. You don't have to go to a website, download their applications, and install it that way. You can do it all within command line. Now, let's open up Homebrew's website. Okay, so we have it here. We can copy and paste this command here and just type it in, and this will automatically prompt us to install command line. Okay, so it's asking me to type in my password. And it's going to ask me to install a bunch of stuff here. So it's just going to ask me the Xcode command line to be installed. Press enter. I'm going to accept that. So this is going to take a while. I'm just going to let it run, and I'll be back when it's done. So it's asking me for a password. Okay, so I'm just going to continue on. It's downloading Homebrew now. Okay, so that's installed now. Now, Homebrew is a CLI for setting up and installing applications. has a bunch of stuff. You can do a search for what you want to search for. So let's say Google Chrome. So you can download Google Chrome here. You could download Git if you wanted to, Yarn, a bunch of different things like that. So it allows us to install our applications through our command line without having to go and download from each one of the websites and not have to download through our app store, through the Google App Store. So, okay, so what we've done here is we've installed this command here. Now, here are some other useful commands. So we can do like a brew update. Should be updated because we just installed it. Okay, so it's already updated. We can do a brew list, and it should give us maybe one thing. No, nothing. And those are casts. So brew lists are brews are formulae for. Explain it here. So if I went to Git, so this is a formula for installing Git from the repo, I think. Now, casts are actual executable binary applications that it will download and install on our behalf. Okay, so let's go back to my Git, and let's make this actually tiled. So we have that. Okay, let's clear this up. Now, let's go and install a couple of things. I want to install these two formula. So what we need to do is brew install /git /wget. And those will install. Okay, so those two just finished installing. Now I'm going to go and install these brew casts. So these are the binary applications. So I'm going to download and install these three web browsers. So we have Google Chrome, Firefox, and Opera here. So those will go ahead through command line, download the application, and install them on our behalf. Okay, so our browsers have installed. Let's install the next set of applications here. So we're going to install Visual Studio Code, Rectangles, and Figma. Now, vscode is our code editor that we'll be looking at in this tutorial. Rectangles is kind of a Windows kind of manager or utilities manager. And Figma is a UI design tool. Now, I'm not going to go and install the rest of these, something like Atom and Sublime Text. These are just optional text editors that you can install. Other apps you can install: Slack, Spotify, Zoom, VLC, iTerminal 2, Postman, Postgres. So there's a bunch of different. So if you want to go ahead and check on here, you can go browse all the macOS formula. There's also analytics here, so you can see what the latest ones have been downloaded. So you can check out to see what the most populars are for formulas and most popular for casts. So iTerm2, Docker, Java, VS Code, Chrome. These all are all the kind of the main players that get downloaded the most. Okay. Now the good thing about Homebrew is it kind of manages all of our apps that we're or applications that we're installing. It manages the updates as well. Okay, so I'm just going to let this download. Okay, so those are all downloaded and installed. Now, if we go back here and do a brew list, it'll give us a list of all the brews. So we install Figma, Firefox, Opera, Chrome, Git, rectangles, a bunch of different stuff here. Okay, and if you wanted to use brew and just did a search, let's say we did a search for Git. Okay, so that brings up a bunch of different different formulas that you could download, a bunch of different casts here as well. Now, let's say here, let's do Spotify. Brew search Spotify. And maybe we won't get as many many results. Yeah, so we have Spotify TUI, Spotify D, mute Spotify ads, Spotify now playing. Okay, so if you're going to search for any application, you do it by doing that. Okay, so let's move on. I'm not going to install these, like I said. If you want to go ahead and install them by yourself, then you can go ahead and pause the video and do that and then come back. Okay, so let's go ahead. We're going to look at shell here. So in Catalina, they decided to make Z shell the default shell over bash. Now we can go and check that out by doing SSH version. Okay, so it's telling me I have 5.1 and it tells me which Z shell. It'll tell me the path. Okay, so by default, it's going to give us that. Now, if you're not on Catalina, like if you're on Mojave, then you can download Z shell through Brew. So just do Brew, or let's do Brew search Z shell. And you can do Brew install Z shell if you want. Okay, so Z shell's there. So you can install it by doing brew install Z shell. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to leave it as that. And then if you have bash as your default, then you can use this command here. And that will set that'll set Z shell as the default for terminal and Mac OS. Now, if it asks you for something like a input, just type in 0. Okay, let's move on into setting up and installing Node, npm, and with NVM. So we're going to do NVM, so Node Version Manager. And this is the website here. So it's this Git repository. It helps us install Node, update Node, have multiple versions of Node. So we're not just confined to having one. That's why I didn't want to install Node through Brew. This just manages it way better. Okay, so we can install by doing this command. Okay, so it's telling us to close the terminal and restart. So let's do that. So I'm going to exit. I'm doing that. I'll bring this back. So we can close that. Open up terminal again. Now let's check out our version. NVM -- version. Okay, so it's not found. So what happened here is we don't have a Z shell. So let's go ahead and one of these profiles. And I think it gave us an error before we closed everything. So let's do a nano Z shell. So this is going to create us a file for this. And just copy and paste this Z shell right at the top. Control X, hit Y for save and clear. And then if we do NVM, let's control exit. Let's try it again. NVM -- and now we have a version. So what happened? We had to. What I should have done was create this file first before we initially restarted. But that's okay. So that's kind of just of a bug if we don't have this already there. I think if I created this beforehand, if I did this before, then maybe we wouldn't have that problem. And on other profiles, if you're using bash, you can put it into these, the same thing. Okay, so let's continue on installing Node. Okay, so let's clear that. Now you can do nvm install Node. And this will go and install the latest version of Node. And I think it's 15.1. Okay, so we did that. Now we can do nvm use Node. And that will set our Node. And we can check our versions, Node -v and npm-v. And we have those two versions. Okay, so in the future, if you want to update NVM, you can go and use this NVM install node, reinstall package from node, and you can do it that way. Now, I want to go and install kind of the more of the standard version, and we can go and check the releases from here, Node.js. And right now, this is the latest version, but I want to install this this version here. So let's go and grab this number. So 14.15. Let's close that. And we can install by nvm install. Okay, so let's go and do this. Node use 14.15. NVM use 14.15. So that will switch our node, and if we do nvm list, it'll tell us that we're using it. Okay, and default is set to that. Now, if we want to change our default, we can do nvm alias, and we can do default 14.15. And now the 14.15 is now set to the default. And if we do list, you can see that we're doing that. And node-v and npm-v. And I'll give us that we're using 14.15 and 6.14.8 for our node version and our npm. Okay, so that's how you set up node and with nvm. So we can download and install different versions, use them differently. We can get the latest version. If we want to update, it's just one command away. So there's a lot of benefits to using NVM over just installing it through Brew or installing Node through Brew. Okay, so let's move on to Git. Now I'm not going to do too much with Git. Just I'm going to create these standard. We're going to get Git version to make sure we have it installed. And we installed that through Brew. Now let's set our name here. So I'm just going to go and say dev. Okay. And I'm going to do this dev cwc. Oh, and this is name. Okay, so if we do an ls dash, we look at our git, so nano.git config. So we'll have our username here as well. Okay, so if you want to go, you can go and change these here if you want to. Now this is the global git config. You can do you can make these same without the global, and those would be for like if you have different configurations for your project at the project level, it will make those changes. Okay, we'll be looking into Git more in a different video, but for right now, that's all I wanted to do, just to make sure it was installed, and we just created this part. Okay, so let's take a look at. Okay, let's take a look at SSH. We're just going to create a quick key. Let's just do SSH. Okay, so it's going to create us a public-private key. I'm just going to name it the standard IDSA or IDRSA. And here you type in a passphrase. You can leave it empty if you want, but I recommend putting a passphrase just for a secondary security. This is basically a password. Okay, so that created. And if we go into, I'm just going to see. Okay, it's created this ID RSA and our public. And we'll use this in a different video as well. I'll go into more details with that in a different video. Okay, so let's... Okay, so that's all I really wanted to cover in this video. We've downloaded all of our applications. Let's go quickly into our Finder. And we can go into Applications here, and we can see what we've downloaded. We've downloaded Chrome. Let me drag that into here beside Safari, because we'll be using that later instead of the default, setting that as our default. What else did we download? vscode. Put that down here. And I think that was it. And Figma. Okay, so we may download some more applications later on, but for now, let's just keep it like this. I wanted to do a quick recap of what we did in this video. We installed command line tools through our Homebrew install, as we were prompted when we were installing Homebrew. We installed a bunch of different applications using Homebrew. We installed Git and wget as formulas. We installed our browsers, Chrome, Firefox, and Opera through the Brewcast, Visual Studio's Rectangles, and Figma. If you aren't using Catalina, you could have installed ZShell through Homebrew. We set up NVM to manage our Node versions. We installed 2 different versions of Node, 15.1 and 14.15, and set 14.15 as the default. We set up our config file for our global config file for Git and added our users. And we created an SSH key. We installed a bunch of applications in this video. For the rest of the series, we'll be looking at configuring and setting up each one of the sections. Okay, so I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed the content so far. If you have any questions or feedback, please leave a comment down below. To stay updated with the latest content from the channel, you can subscribe by clicking right here in the middle.